Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy you're here with us today. We are happy to start, and I just mentioned that I really hope that I can be a facilitator of a great conversation today. That's really what this is all about. We at Mentor Minnesota are happy to bring you the Bagels and Best Practice. Today, we're talking about youth leadership and supporting and empowering youth voice. And I'm also joined by my teammates, Sarah Schaefer and Allie Irving. And we're also joined by some amazing champions in this work. We've got a program leader from Youthprise joining us. And then we also have Janae Olinger and Maddie Keil from BestPrep. So with that, again, we're very happy you're here today. And we really believe that uplifting youth voice means really rethinking how we approach this work. I think it's vital that, we listen to youth voice and that we listen in order to lift them up, allow young people to really lead and to allow them to have agency. So with that, I'd like to just share a short clip. It's just a minute, but I really hope that it helps ground us in our conversation today.
But I've learned that you are never too small to make a difference.
I'm still an undergraduate student in college. And yes, I think that I'm crazy enough to change the world.
Change is here. The sun shines on a new day, and the day is ours.
I am here today to acknowledge and represent the African American girls whose stories don't make the front page of every national newspaper.
I have a dream that enough is enough.
And if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school, then imagine what we could all do together if we really wanted to.
So with that, we're excited to imagine, right? As that young person just said, imagine what we could accomplish. Well, we're excited to imagine what we could accomplish when we really do lift that youth voice. So our agenda for facilitating that great conversation is my hope for today, but to go over sort of how it's going to look. We'd like to introduce to all of you that maybe are new to Mentor Minnesota, and we want to share a little bit of what we do and who we are. And then also introduce some high level best practices when it comes to youth voice, and also share a couple of our tools, and that's the elements of effective practice for mentoring, and also some other tools that are provided and that we work closely with, and that's the National Mentoring Resource Center. Within those tools, we're going to highlight some key concepts and when it comes to supporting youth leadership. And then maybe the best part of all of this is to hear from some program leaders that we've really identified as champions in this work of uplifting and really empowering young people. And we've got Neese Parker from Youthprise joining us, Janae Olinger, and she's the Vice President of Educational Programs, and Maddie Keil, the Program Manager for Cloud Coach at BestPrep. And then at the end, we will have some time for some questions and answers, but if any time during the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat. And then, if we aren't able to get to them at that moment, then we'll go back through the chat at the end and then go through some of those questions and do our best to answer them. So as we're going to be introducing ourselves, we'd love to also get to know you. So if you'd be so kind to, in the chat, share your name, pronouns, the organization that you're with. And because we're in the month of November, and I think a time and place of thoughtful thinking and a place of gratitude. I know Give to the Max is coming up, so we're really thinking of being thankful and being grateful all at the same time. So I'm curious if you could send a thank you note to anyone, who would you send it to and why? So again, your name, your pronoun, organization, and if you could send a thank you note to anyone, who would you send it to and why? So if you would just go ahead and put that right into the chat, that would be wonderful. And then we can get to know you while we introduce ourselves. I'm going to toss the mic over to our amazing executive director, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm so thankful that you are here today. So I guess that's my first thank you note, but I am the executive director at Mentor Minnesota. I've been in this work for almost a decade, and I am really excited about this topic, not only because I am personally invested in this work, but I'm excited to learn from all of you because Mentor Minnesota really wants to increase the amount of youth voice and youth leadership at our own agency. And so I am really excited that we're all here participating in this. And I think if I was to write a thank you letter to somebody, it would definitely be the librarian who lived across the street from me growing up, because she was like a second parent to me. And I thought of her the other week. And so maybe I will actually do that. But I'm gonna kick it over to Allie.
Hello, I'm Allie Irvig, she, her. I'm the program coordinator, Vista. I need to think a little bit more about this question. I'm kind of leaning towards my orchestra teacher freshman year, who like really believed in me and a couple other freshmen and mentored us. So back to Emily.
Thanks, Sarah and Allie. I'm Emily Geray, she, her pronouns. I'm the program director for Mentor Minnesota. I've been working with young people for almost 20 years. Don't do the math on that. I appreciate it if you just not. But I'm excited and very passionate about this. And I think maybe one of the most exciting things to talk about really is I genuinely believe in advocating for young people. And so talking about this today is just something that I've really been passionate about and excited about. So I'm excited to be in great company in this conversation. For being grateful and who I would write a thank you note to, I'm a mom of two, I'm probably biased, but two pretty cool kids. And so I would want to write a thank you to them. Even though they're 16 and 19 now, they still provide me with an amazing perspective on life and really what matters most. So I would want to thank both of them for just being a tremendous gift. And again, always reminding me to stay humble and have an open heart and an open mind. So thank you for all of you too for sharing in the chat. I appreciate that. As I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a little bit deeper introduction here in a minute, but I do want to mention that Neese Parker from Youthprise is here. She's the youth engagement manager. We also have Janae Olinger, the vice president of educational programs at BestPrep, and Maddie, Keil, she's the program manager at Cloud Coach BestPrep. And soon I'll be handing the mic over to them to kind of, and maybe if Janae and Maddie, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and say who you'd write your thank you to, or have you put it in the chat? I can't see the chat, so.
Yeah, we put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect, awesome. It's one of those fun things about technology when you're not in person. It's a lot of things to navigate, so bear with me on this journey. So thank you, all of you, for listening to that and for sharing. And so we invited these amazing program leaders, as I mentioned, those that we've identified as really champions in this work, because engaging local leadership and connecting people to each other, what we're doing here today, is really a core value in our mission. We also strive for all youth to, having agency. And that's agency and power at home, at school, in the community, and also in the workplace. So that's, this conversation is really core to one of, to our mission and to our pillars of work. We also believe in empirical research and using evidence-based practices. It's really important to us to use these best practices as our guide in providing support and resources. And with that, one of our most utilized tools is really the elements of effective practice for mentoring. And within this elements of effective practice, they are 6 core elements that are a collection of research-informed practices. And it promotes overall program quality and allows guidance to having strong mentoring relationships. And it also offers recommendations of to program management, program leadership, core principles, and really allows for uplifting some values to programs. So what does it mean to amplify youth voice? I think that's sort of, not necessarily a buzzword, but something that you're, I think, going to be hearing more and more as we learn really the power that uplifting young people can have, I think, and inviting them to the conversation. So it really means incorporating young voice everywhere. So when we amplify and view young people through an asset-based lens, we allow those inherent talents to shine. And when we allow those to shine, we really gain new perspectives. We can learn from each other. And so I've identified a few things here and just some, again, I'm going to keep it brief just because I want to allow our guests to have enough time to talk about some specific things that they've been doing within their programs to really highlight all of this. But these are some things for all of us to think about and maybe ask, are we doing this within our programs or organizations? And so, are we including them as maybe a board service member? Do we have a young program lead, a young person that maybe comes in and consults and discusses getting a pulse on really what's going on with young people? Youth panels and opportunities to tell their story. I think storytelling, as we know, is super powerful. It allows us to connect with each other and I think brings us together. And it also allows us to keep a clear perspective. And really no one does it better than young people when it comes to perspective. They are amazing assets to really lean into. So again, helping to connect young people to resources and networks. Another thing that's being discussed is compensation, for time and talent. And this can look a lot of different ways, but I think it's something important for programs and organizations to think about what that would look like. And then possibly two big things. And I think coming out of COVID and how programming and a lot of things shifted, a lot of the world really paused, and I think maybe allowed us to see how important it is to model and practice self-care. And this is no different for young people. I think there was a lot being asked of young people to maybe engage in school on a screen for several hours. And then we were asking them to engage on a screen again or in some other capacity. And so I think it's important that as we're talking about elevating and incorporating youth voice, that we all also ourselves model and practice self-care and being mindful of mental health right now and how it's a real thing, and being able to be present and to recognizing some of that for young people. And lastly, what I'll say with this is really how important it is, I think, to be in community and learning together with young people. And so, staying connected with them, and it's also just, understanding that if we're in the community with the young people and we're connecting with them, it allows them to see a genuine side of that, and it begins to really foster that authentic relationship. And thinking of programming that we're providing and creating programming and opportunities for young people that are not just for young people, but rather with young people. I think it's really important that they're included in these conversations as much as possible. I'm going to be sharing in a wraparound email with all of you folks that are here today, as I won't go through all of these different tools, but we really want you to be able to walk away with some on the ground resources and tools to take with you. And so I'll be sharing some different ones as we have some supplements that go with our elements of effective practice that are specifically for and aimed at youth voice, talking about youth purpose, peer mentoring, group mentoring, and really how we can best uplift and engage with young people. So I didn't get a chance. Sarah, I was just going to ask, was Neese able to jump in?
Yes, she's here. Her
Okay.
camera is broken, but she's here.
Wonderful. Awesome. So I'll do a little brief introduction. Sorry, folks, I can't see the chat and all of you at the same time, so I apologize, but doesn't mean that I don't care deeply that you're here. I'm so happy that Neese Parker, Youth Engagement Manager from Youthprise, is here joining us today. Neese coordinates youth engagement at Youthprise, and this includes supporting young people, partnering with Youthprise, and facilitating programs and program initiatives such as Youth Bank, that Neese is going to be talking about, and also YPAR Network. Neese is also trained in design thinking, facilitation, and uplifting youth voice. Following Neese, I'm just going to do a really brief introduction of Janae and Maddie, who are also here. Janae is the Vice President of Educational Programs at BestPrep and has a ton of experience really elevating and supporting youth leadership. And Janae is joined by Maddie Keil, the Program Manager of the Cloud Coach program at BestPrep. Before her role, she assisted with e-mentoring programs and was also the Senior Programs Associate. So thank you all for being here. And with that, I'm going to grab some more tea and I'll hand the mic over to Neese, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Perfect. Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Good. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, a little heads up. So I still have yet to contact our tech guy, but my camera is broken. My video is on, but it's not on. So just being
sure, I can reshare my screen too, Neese, and then I'll have your picture up if you'd prefer, or do you want all of us to just stay in conversation?
Love that picture, but I'm fine either or.
Okay.
This is fine with me.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. So it's hard to really follow that. I feel like you definitely touch base on a lot of dope things that I feel like a lot of nonprofit folks need to know nowadays. I think once we get into nonprofit systems, it's kind of hard to rejoin community on that genuine level. So my name is Neese Parker. Like we said, I'm the Youth Engagement Manager at Youthprise. That means making sure the organization is partnering with young people in ways that are non-harmful, avoiding harmful practices, mutually beneficial, making sure there's fair compensation, making sure we're avoiding tokenism, and making sure that we're doing that to the best of our capacities. And that's for internally and externally as well. So we give trainings and consulting to other organizations throughout the process, but pretty much making sure that young people are feeling impactful and as mutual as our adult staff and our adult partners. Should I just go through these questions, or should I wait for a cue to answer?
No, absolutely.
Okay, sure.
Yep, it's all yours.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about our YPAR Youth Bank and some of the other work that we do. So at Youthprise, we're really big on creating systems outside of the systems that we already have, right? But we want to create these systems to where young people are leading them and are the not only the leaders of these systems, but the stakeholders as well. So kind of for youth by youth type situation. So I can talk a little bit about YPAR first, and then I can lead into Youth Bank. So YPAR stands for Youth Participatory Action Research. Okay, so it's a mouthful. And what it basically means is young people take control of the research within their communities. And after gaining that research, they communicate it back to the community and then take an action afterwards. So there's an action that follows that research. A lot of times with how research is done, particularly mainstream research, you kind of become the subject of the project, and then there's no really follow-up after. So there's some guy that comes, asks you a bunch of questions, you answer these questions, you may get compensated, and then that's where the research goes on your end as a researchee. So then we wanted to change that up a lot and give research back into the hands of the community. YPAR is growing to become more mainstream. I think a lot of folks are starting to hear about it now. But some of the ways that we've done that, for example, we had the Northside research team. They were all young people, all from North Minneapolis, all people of color. And we asked them, what is it that you want to research? What is it that you feel like is important to community right now? And they immediately said police and community relationships. Now, mind you, this was in 2015 when this started happening. So they started doing the police and community relationships research. They were a health disparities group, so they focused on mental health with this topic. So what does it look like? What does it mean for community members to constantly see police lights, right? What happens to your body? What happens to your hands? How tense do you get when you get pulled over by a police officer? What does this do to your mind on a consistent basis? And what ended up happening is the murder of Jamar Clark followed right after. So then it became something that the community built passion around. And after that research, they did about 73 interviews, 170 surveys, and they held a forum at URock that was on North Minneapolis, a few blocks away from the incident that happened. And they had Chief Hartu in the room. They had other police officers in the room. We did ask that they didn't come in uniform. That didn't necessarily happen, but we definitely had a lot of valuable community conversations with police officers, with community members, with community leaders and other nonprofits, and folks who just lived there. And it was really great to like see that unfold. Hartu didn't stay for too long for the conversation, but it was great to have that space and to take some type of action. And a lot of things did come out of that. But that's what we try to do. So we build networks, right? So how it looks is multiple organizations, and Youthprise acts as a hub, right? So there will be about 10 different organizations doing this YPAR work, and we kind of act as a guiding support to all of them. And that's the same model with Youth Bank as well. Now, Youth Bank is a youth-directed giving concept. So same thing, but young people acting as a philanthropist within their communities. So they do the fundraising, they make the RFPs, they release them to other youth-led programs and initiatives. So other young people apply for this grant, and then they review those grants and allocate it accordingly. A dope example of that is I believe it was in one of those F cities. I don't think it was Fergus Falls. I don't think it was Farrington. What's another one?
Farmington?
No, it wasn't that one. It was up there though, it's up. I'll think about it later. So basically what happened was young people were expressing how hard it was to get around. Since this was a rural area, young people were having a really hard time getting to school, getting home. Parents had to work. So that means after school activities were pretty hard. Social environments were pretty hard. Getting to work and coming home on time to do their homework was pretty hard. So then it also made an impact on the financial stability of their home. So what Youth Bank started doing was providing scholarships to young people to actually take their driver's classes and to be able to get their driver's classes certifications. And the program got so successful that the city actually adopted it. And now it's a consistent program that young people can sign up for and has shown to have huge impacts in that area. And that's one of them. So those are some of the systems that we do. Those are some of the systems that we lead. We also have a big focus on entrepreneurship. Economic resilience is huge for Youthprise and for me personally. I don't know how much time do I have left, Emily?
Maybe about 5 minutes.
Oh, damn. Okay. All right. So I wanted to share our definition real quick about what youth engagement is. And I wanted to share I'll keep it at two, right? The two big things that I want to make sure that folks are understanding in the positions of power that we have. So we see youth engagement as allowing young people to have a voice and a hand in all of the work that involves them and affects them on their communities. Youth engagement is an intentional commitment to authentically involve youth in all decisions and actions of impactful work. Give youth autonomy over their work, make sure all positions and titles align youth as peers. Youth work plans should be explicitly tied to the organizational work plan. If established, this structure, you will see that young people's experience is treated as important and their work as integral to the success as the organization as their adult colleagues. And a reason why this is so difficult for a lot of organizations to do and why this is seen as so quote unquote radical. I have to say quote unquote because you guys can't see me, but a lot of folks are trying to find the right young person, right? They're trying to find the right young person. And when I say that, I mean, they're trying to find young people with respectability politics. Okay, they're trying to find young people that can imitate what adults do, that can talk like adults, that can dress like adults, that can interact with funders that they may have, like adults would, that can be presentable, if you will, by our own standards. And the problem with that is, if we are trying to serve young people that are most at risk, right, that are most marginalized, that are due to intersectionalities in their life, they are the most oppressed within our current society, then we miss a lot of the experiential knowledge that they bring to the table. The longer we try to find young people that fit into what our box is to be a dope young person, we miss those young people that actually experienced all the things that we're trying to change. And if we have them at the table, the work that we do has no other choice but to be innovative and impactful. Okay, and I'm going to use this metaphor that I often use. Say you're driving, right? And you see a car broken down and you have great intentions and you want to help these people, right? So you say, you know what? I'm going to go get them 4 new tires. Boom, they'll never have to worry about that again. So you go, you get the tires, you bring it back and you say, here you go, guys. And they say, it was our alternator that was actually off, right? Our tires is fine, right? So thank you for the tires. That's going to come in handy someday, possibly, right? But our alternator is what was wrong. If we had pulled over and talked with them, right, and understood what their problem was, then we probably would have been a lot more impactful to get their car moving, right? So a lot of the work that we do with young people, we don't bring them to the table. We're not asking them what they need. We're not asking them how can we be impactful. We're bringing things to them and we're saying, here, take this. And they're saying, dope, you know, like that after school program was cool. And I'll probably remember that later on in life at some point, right? But right now I need a job so I can make sure that my younger siblings are eating every day. Or I need a car, an actual car, not a metaphorical car, but an actual car. So I can sustain myself. Or I need a place to live because it's getting cold outside, right? So these are the things that we have to keep in context with, because a lot of young people aren't living lives as quote unquote young people. A lot of them have real situations, real problems, real things that adults should be exclusive with dealing with, but that's not the way our society works, right? And trust, make sure you're trusting them to bring them to the table and trusting that they have enough agency to give the organization what you need, and then also reciprocate that to them and make sure that this relationship is mutually beneficial. But I think I'm going over time now, so.
No, that's great. Thanks, Neese. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I just had one question, Neese, and I love there were many little sound bites that I just loved that you brought up about how as adults, we're often looking for the young person who can imitate adulthood, who maybe already fit into the narrow version of professionalism that we have set out or expected of young people. And so I'm really glad that you brought that to the table, because I think there's so much more that we could unpack there. And kind of in that, I'm wondering how you do prepare young people who are coming to YPAR to conduct this research, and maybe if there are ways that you recruit young people into this program. I'm just curious how you hold those two together, this idea of needing to expand who's at the table and also re-envisioning like how it happens.
That's a great question. So one of the things that we try to keep in mind, so when it comes to recruitment, we try to keep a peer-to-peer model. So young people know the people in their community, right? And if we want to keep that consistent, then we allow them to take agency over recruitment as well. If they know who would want to be involved, they know who's a good fit, they know what type of conversation sparks their other peers, and like which peers get super excited over certain things, bring them to the table. And what we found with that is that not only do we keep the community that we're working in consistent, but the young people feel like they're creating a change as well, because now they're providing opportunities for their peers that at one point wasn't there, right? You know, who had a friend in high school that could get you jobs? Not many, right? So like that's a big thing, and we allow them to take agency over that recruitment. Another thing that we say is it's one thing to train them in YPAR, right? That's a big thing, and that's important, and that's something that we do with due diligence. How to conduct the research, what are the best practices when talking to an interviewee? How do you open up the conversation with open-ended questions, with questions that aren't leading, with questions that aren't harmful? How do you gauge the way you ask questions so they're not leaving with all this shit on their chest, right? Sorry for my swear word. But how do you make sure that they're leaving the conversation comfortable as well? But we do encourage them to keep themselves authentic. If they're coming from that community, then I'm pretty sure they know how to interact with their community best, right? So the way someone from Plymouth would do research in North Minneapolis would look a lot different from the kid that grew up around everyone, that everybody saw in the neighborhood consistently, and now he's asking you all these questions about police and community relationships. However they choose to have their code of conduct is what we allow them to have, because they know the community best. And we've shown, you know, that's impactful, you know what I mean? And your last question was, clarify for me real quick.
Well, so now we have kind of two quick ones, which is preparing YPAR participants. So I'm just curious about the training process for that. And then Tanya had a really great question asking, how do you work with adults who are just looking for the model youth, who want kind of a youth spokesperson in voice only?
Okay, so we do have a YPAR toolkit that's available on our website. But we take a very long process with training them in YPAR, depending on what it is that they're trying to do. If they're trying to just lead focus groups, that's one type of training. If they're trying to do qualitative versus quantitative research, those are types of trainings, right? But it takes a long time depending on the organization and depending on what type of experience that they have with research. So some of them do have a lot of experience. So we use a lot of steps within that YPAR toolkit, and it is on our website if you guys want to check it out. And it's also available for purchase, but whatever, dude, you know. But I think when we're working with adults that kind of want to check the box of youth voice, and they say, yeah, we want youth voice. Oh, we brought those young people into our meeting that one time and they didn't even say anything, but they were there. and they get to check that box and move forward. When it comes to tokenism, a lot of harmful things can come out of that. And I think that whenever we're working with adults that have this idea of what it means to involve young people, it's going to be like pulling teeth, but it's always necessary to make sure that they are expanding their views and their perspectives and their knowledge around partnership with young people and what it means to partner with young people. How do they see gatekeeping, right? How do they see all these privileges that they might not want to acknowledge? Because chances are, if they are very particular about how they work with young people, it could lead into other marginalized communities and how they see them as well. Not saying that everybody who is, biased towards adults versus young people are going to be racist. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that that type of mindset can carry over to other situations as well. So we have to be very careful with who we allow to partner with young people. And if they are not in that position, we definitely either hold it ourselves and we hold that partnership on our end, or we lead them in training, or we just say no. But I think it's a responsibility, if you will, to say yes, to keep moving that needle. Because at some point, if they're dedicated on a level to checking that box, then there might be young people in the future that have harmful interactions with them. So it's important for us to train, and we do a lot of those trainings as well.
No, that's great. Thanks, Neese. I always appreciate your perspective, and I really, as Sarah mentioned, appreciate you bringing that to the table. And sometimes those tough conversations are the ones that are most important. So if folks have more questions, by all means, continue to put them in the chat, and then we can go over them here at the end. I am going to hand the mic over to Janae and Maddie for a bit, and then hopefully we'll have, again, some time at the end to keep the conversations going.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Neese. I was writing a lot of notes down, and I think we're going to get at a little bit of what we do for Tanya's question too. So that was a great lead in, Tanya, of some of the stuff we're going to talk about, which is awesome. So I'm Janae Olinger. I'm with BestPrep. Maddie Keil's here as well. Maddie is really running one of our huge mentoring programs, which is why I wanted to make sure her voice was being heard today. I'm going to tell you very briefly about BestPrep, and then we're going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of what we do. So our mission is to prepare students with business, career, and financial literacy skills through hands-on experiences that inspire success in work and life. We do that through 7 different programs, 2 are speaker programs, 2 are mentoring programs, Cloud Coach and eMentors, just in case you keep hearing those programs being said through Maddie and I. We have a stock market game program. So those are our 5 school year programs, if you will. And then we have Minnesota Business Venture, a summer camp program for high school students, and the Technology Integration Workshop, which is a summer camp professional development opportunity for educators. So very briefly, business, career, and financial literacy skills. We work with 4th through 12th graders, and we're a 45-year-old organization only in Minnesota. But what we're going to talk about today is really focused on high school students. Just so you have a very brief overview of who we are and what we do. Okay, I'm going to first talk about Minnesota Business Venture. So Minnesota Business Venture is a week-long summer camp where students come onto a college campus, and then we slip in a lot of financial literacy and business and career skills while we have them do an activity that is akin to Shark Tank, where they are in a small group. They come up with a product or idea or service, and then create a business plan so that by the end of the week, they present it to a panel of judges. There are a lot of different things at Minnesota Business Venture that lend themselves to student leadership, which is why we're starting with this program. In the last 2 years, we've done this program solely online. So we've had a virtual camp, which is a very different experience than students are used to. But because we had a virtual camp, we shifted a few things. One is that we created a role called the student MC. So typically it would be myself or another person on our staff who's in front of the students, like giving directions and helping them understand things, or doing Q&A with our keynote or breakout speakers. And we totally shifted that over the last 2 years so that it's, yes, I'm there, but I actually was on screen maybe a quarter of the time. And then our student MC was the one really leading everybody throughout the camp. Did I help them create their script? Absolutely. Did they then run with it and ask the questions they wanted? And did we get an impromptu concert from a musician because of it? Also, yes. So we were really able to have another student who was in charge. That student this last year was named Kadra, 2 years ago was named Akshay, and they were just amazing. They were kind of the lifeblood of camp. They really kept students understanding what they were supposed to do. They had been campers themselves, so they could explain things really well. Questions got asked to them and they were answering them. So we're really trying to empower a person in charge, like in that way. At camp, we also have what we call our CEOs. So in our small groups, we call them companies. They are consistent of about 15 student participants, and then one second-year student participant who is the CEO, who's someone who's come back in a leadership role. So our student groups are led by those CEOs. They have an adult leader called the resident business leader, who we're going to talk a little bit about how we train them in a minute, but that adult leader is kind of constantly being told, like, please try to like shift questions back to your student leader because they know the information. And if they don't, this is a great learning opportunity for them. At camp, we also have a communication specialist. So any student who's like, I really want to come back in a leadership role, but leading a group is not in my bag. They can come back in a creative role. So that role takes photos, writes blog posts, could do social media. They could create a video that they put together. So there's a bunch of different things, and we always have a couple of those students on campus with us, or we still have them in our virtual camp as well. And then with the role we did not have at our virtual camp is dorm monitors. So we also hire young people to be our dorm monitors. I will say young means after their freshman year of college. So it's a little older than high school students, but we try to really have the people who are also like enforcing the rules and like helping students through things if students have questions, to be someone who's a little bit more on their level. Yes, staff is always on campus as well, but we didn't want to like have it really imposing force within the dorms. Dorm monitors have a lot of risk protocol they look through, but definitely a way for our students to have another trusted mentor who's a younger person. And then finally with camp, we do something called student ambassadors. And so those are students who have attended camp before who want a role throughout the school year. And we're shifting a little bit how we do this. One of the things that we're trying to figure out over the last couple of years has been, how do we have our student ambassadors not only work on camp, but also contribute to our speaking programs, or we do mock interviews? Can they talk about the questions that we give them? Like, what are other ways we can get that student voice? Because like Neese said, it's very important, and it sounds like Youthprise is doing amazing work in that space. I think we still have a little bit of growing to do. So we're still figuring out, like, how do we get more opportunities for youth voice in all of our programs? Okay, that was a lot really fast about Minnesota Business Venture. We're going to shift to Maddie talking a little bit about how we've been training some of our resident business leaders on this generation, and then we'll shift a little bit to mentoring programs.
Great. Thanks so much, Janae, and thank you everyone for having us here. It was great to hear from you, Neese. I feel like I also wrote down a lot and have, I'm going to go back and reflect on that. It's a lot of good information. But as Janae said, we do a training for our resident business leaders who are all adults in the business community. And we think it's really important that they have some more training on who they're working with and how to best support them. So I know you all, seems like you all work really closely with youth, so I'm going to keep this really brief, but we like to start when we do a training with them about who Gen Z is, and give them a little bit more insight, since none of our resident business leaders are Gen Z themselves. So I thought we would kind of talk about that really briefly with you all today. So Background on Gen Z, these are folks who were born in 1996 or later, and most say the cutoff for Gen Z is around 2010. They do share a number of characteristics with millennials, being close in age. However, they have a lot of different things happening in their upbringing, the millennials, that result in kind of different attitudes and tendencies and outlooks on life than millennials have. They're also on track to be the most well-educated generation so far. They're less likely to drop out of high school and more likely to be enrolled in college than any other previous generation. You can also see on the graph that over the generations, they become more and more diverse, with Gen Z being the most diverse generation so far. They're much more likely to have grown up in a diverse family structure. So whether that's single parent household, multiracial household, in which the gender lines were blurred. But this has really resulted in their less phased than previous generations on differences in race, sexual orientation, and religion. They are also considered our first digital natives, meaning that we're born after the widespread adoption of digital technology. They were born during a time of peak innovation. And so they've kind of always grown up in a time when information has been just accessible at the tips of their fingertips. And social media has been very widespread for them, which this has brought a lot of sides. They have a lot of knowledge on a lot of things. Again, with having information just at their fingertips. On the other hand, so much screen time can lead to feelings of isolation and potentially underdeveloped social skills. Most Gen Z students are also very self-motivated to win, and they see kind of winning in more of a traditional sense of getting good grades, getting into a good college, finding a good job that pays well. However, they tend to have a lot of kind of pressure built on them. They're more like twice as likely than any other generation to be diagnosed with anxiety or depression. They're also really financially minded. So they saw their parents or guardians' struggles of the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. And so they are really driven by pragmatism and security. And they realize there's a lot of money that you can make in today's society. And so 58% of Gen Zs want to own their own business one day. And then lastly, the individual versus collaboration. So generally millennials, they prefer more collaborative environment, but actually Gen Zs have been raised with more of an individualistic or competitive nature. So they kind of prefer doing things on their own. And the next slide, we have just a table that we like to show our resident business leaders. So we kind of go through on one side, like what is normal that you'll probably experience, and then how we can help prepare you to be successful with students. So, you know, that adults will typically get asked direction for things from students. They will ask for permission, but we try to really encourage our resident business leaders to ask students questions back, kind of help empower them to make their own decisions, and definitely being there as a guide, not just leaving them there, but encouraging them on the path to make their own decisions. Shorter attention spans, so we encourage them to really get creative with how to take breaks, make things fun, help students be able to focus more. They also can tend to see an adult as an authority figure. And so that means Janae talked about how we have that CEO role, which is a student. And so students can sometimes tend to just go to the resident business leader because they are an adult and seen as that authority figure. But we do really try to encourage our resident business leaders, you know, redirect to the CEO, help them take on this leadership, give them a voice, kind of redirect so that we can help grow our students in their leadership. And again, there is support. We tend to see a big maturity gap measured in even months between students. So you might find that two 15-year-olds are drastically different. But in this, we talk about how really trying to create a role for each student. And so someone might not be interested in some of the traditional roles that we offer for our companies. And so finding out really what are they interested, how do we make a place for them here? What type of roles, like how can we get creative to give them a place and ownership? And then experiences need to be worth their time. So Gen Z really likes to see the practical and how what they're learning is going to how it's going to be connected to their real life. So helping them see the benefit and value in what they're doing and how it applies to them. Why should they care, basically? And then lastly, they can tend to spot real and genuine versus fake and commercial pretty easy. So we encourage adults, be yourself. Ask questions when you don't know. So for example, I know a couple months ago, I heard a young person say the term straight facts, no printer. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. So just asking instead of assuming and trying to look cool or not be yourself, because they can sniff that out pretty easily. Okay, and then the last slide that I have. So again, Janae mentioned I'm the program manager of our Cloud Coach program. And so we work with 8 Minneapolis-St. Paul public schools. We take the entire 9th grade and pair them up one-to-one with a business mentor from one or more companies. And then they connect over 8 weeks online. And so kind of what I've seen in that is that kind of a big role, I would say, in advancing youth leadership and voice in Cloud Coach has been really focusing on the training and equipping of mentors in that, and kind of helping them see what kind of mindset we'd like them to take on. So we did work with Search Institute, who they're a nonprofit organization that studies and works to strengthen youth success. And so they helped us create what we call our gateway prompts. And so these are guides that get sent to mentors every week as a starting point for them to craft their messages. We share kind of the objective we're hoping to get at that week, questions they can ask, research behind that. And what we're trying to go for is really helping them see that students are the experts on their own life, and that their role as a mentor is to really walk alongside as a support, ask good questions, just help draw out what do they want for their future, and what is even one step that mentor could help them take to realize that future that they see for themselves. And so we have 2 of the 8 weeks that are just focused on getting to know your student, finding out their interests, how do they think about school, just really trying to get to know them before. I can tend to see sometimes mentors see their role as just provide advice, say about what they did in their life and how that's the way to do it. And so that can be our challenge sometimes, is just helping mentors learn about what is the mindset we're hoping that they take on, and what their role really is and is not. And so I would say a lot of my job and the job of the other folks on our team who work in Cloud Coach is we receive a lot of mentor emails and just helping them kind of learn more and see a broader perspective. I know I get sometimes emails from mentors of like, I'm not getting through to my student, they keep skipping school, or things like that, to help them learn like what is your role and how do we help you kind of focus in. I would say we definitely have opportunities to grow. We would love to further incorporate student voice and leadership, and not only giving students a seat at the table, but really decision-making power. That's something that I'm trying to think about more and how we can grow in that. Turn over to Janae.
Sorry about that. I clearly hit something wrong, but
You're good.
We have, I know, just a few minutes. So a few takeaways, things that Maddie and I were kind of saying, we just wanted to kind of hit one more time. Students know their own experiences. We really encourage adults to be curious, because to get to the point of offering advice, we think that an adult should feel like they know someone first. So we kind of kept putting in like, ask questions, like put it back on the student, let them talk about their experiences. I think that's really something that Maddie and I like to think through a lot. There are specific questions we have in here that you can ask. And then considering a student board or advisory committee, we have the ambassador committee, but we don't have a student board at this point. That's something that we're working for. So just if you already do, that's great. You're ahead of us. We're still figuring out how to make it all work within our current structure. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then see if we can have a conversation in our time left with Neese or your questions.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Maddie and Janae. And I love that you kept bringing up the mentoring mindset, because it really is coming from a place of curiosity, in our trainings when we're talking about roles of being, what does it mean to be a mentor, and how vital it is that folks come at it with a curious lens and leaving assumption at the door, so I'm happy that you uplifted that a little. But yes, we can open the floor for questions. We have a few minutes, but if anyone wants to unmute themselves or share it in the chat, please feel free to do that. I might just pop up my screen here that can stay up, but.
I think something I heard was the need for training in a number of different competencies. So one might be around an understanding of the different generations, which Amy uplifted a really great resource with bridge work. And we've also heard a little bit more about like cultural competence and cultural humility. I'm wondering if there's any other training that folks have done that felt really impactful in helping support young people to kind of take the helm. And maybe that's also training for the adults.
We, for Cloud Coach, we, with each company, we have them watch a pre-recorded training video that we have every volunteer watch in Cloud Coach, but then we also bring in an educator or an administrator from that specific school to talk with the mentors live about who the students are, how to best connect with them. And I find that really, the mentors give us feedback that that's the most helpful. Like, these people work with these students every day. They know them the best. And we provide them some questions to help get at some of kind of the gaps we see with mentors, such as like talk about how high school is different now for students than it was when you were a mentor or, school age. So that's some training that we've done that's helpful.
And I think one of the other things we do for our summer camp program specifically is like a personality test of some sort, so that the adults and students all like have language that's similar to talk about, even if they're not, if their personalities are wildly different, they have language to talk about with it, which is nice. And so sometimes that's 16 personalities. There's a color wheel. There's a few different options, but that is something that we try to do so that if something's going a little awry between a student-adult relationship, there's more language that can be used about why they think or see things a little bit differently.
And I think that speaks a lot to the being in the community with young people, just engaging in these really thoughtful conversations, and again, a place of curiosity, leaving assumptions behind, walking softly, like I always say, as we don't know everyone's story. And so always coming from a very culturally humble, soft place. And I think in doing that, you build community, and within that, uplifting the young people to feel heard is also, so vital to all of this. I know a few folks I think have had to bounce out of here too, but we're happy to stay on for a few extra minutes too if folks have other questions. I will be sending out a wraparound email with all the resources that were shared here today for folks. But at any time, you can always reach out to Sarah or myself if you have questions. And, I can connect you to folks at BestPrep, Youthprise. Again, I just thank you all so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.